The words hit Rose Wellington like a fist to the stomach as she stood in the doorway of their small ranch house outside Tucson, Arizona, her hands trembling against the wooden frame. "You are not worth the food it takes to keep you alive," her husband Thomas said, his voice flat and cold as he sat at their dinner table in the summer of 1878, not even looking up from the newspaper he had been reading for the past hour while she prepared their evening meal. Rose felt her throat tighten, but she refused to let the tears fall, not in front of him, not anymore after 3 years of marriage that had slowly drained every ounce of joy from her 23-year-old soul. Thomas Wellington had seemed different when they first met in Philadelphia, charming and ambitious, promising her a life of adventure out west where he planned to build a cattle empire. Rose had been swept up in his vision, leaving behind her family and everything familiar to become his wife at 20 years old. But the man who had courted her with flowers and sweet words had vanished the moment they arrived in the Arizona territory, replaced by someone bitter and cruel who blamed her for every hardship they faced. The ranch struggled, the cattle died in the harsh summer heat, and Thomas found it easier to blame his wife than to admit his own failures as a rancher. She turned away from him now, her cotton dress sticking to her back in the oppressive heat, and walked out onto the porch. The sun was setting over the desert landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if she could see past the ache in her chest. Rose had grown thin over the past year, her cheekbones prominent in her face, not because there was no food but because Thomas had taken to controlling every aspect of their meals, serving himself first and leaving her with whatever remained, which was often precious little. "I am going into town tomorrow," she said quietly, stepping back inside. "We need supplies." Thomas finally looked up, his gray eyes assessing her with the same coldness he might show a disappointing horse. "Take the wagon. Be back before dark. And do not embarrass me by looking like some beggar woman." Rose nodded, knowing it was pointless to argue. She had learned that much in 3 years. That night, she lay on her side of their bed, as far from Thomas as possible, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how her life had come to this. She thought about her mother back in Philadelphia, who had cried when Rose left, as if she knew something her daughter did not. Rose had been so sure of herself then, so confident that love would conquer any obstacle. Now she knew better. The next morning, Rose dressed carefully in her least worn dress, a pale blue cotton with small white flowers that reminded her of happier times. She pinned her dark blonde hair up neatly and climbed onto the wagon seat, taking the reins of their old mare. The ride into Tucson took nearly an hour, the desert stretching endlessly on either side of the dusty road. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels against the bright blue sky, and the heat was already intense, even though it was barely 9 in the morning. Tucson was a bustling town, full of miners, ranchers, merchants, and everyone trying to make their fortune in the territory. Rose guided the wagon down Main Street, passing the saloons and general stores, the bank and the hotel. She had a list of supplies Thomas had given her, along with strict instructions about how much she could spend. As she pulled up in front of Morrison's General Store, she noticed a commotion down the street near the restaurant. A tall man in dusty cowboy attire was helping an elderly Mexican woman carry her packages, his hat tipped politely as he spoke to her in what sounded like fluent Spanish. Rose could not help but watch for a moment, struck by the gentleness in his movements, so different from the harsh treatment she had grown accustomed to. The cowboy was broad-shouldered and moved with an easy confidence, his dark hair visible beneath his hat. Even from a distance, there was something about him that seemed solid and dependable. Rose shook her head, chiding herself for staring, and climbed down from the wagon. She had no business noticing other men, no matter how unhappy her marriage had become. Inside the store, she methodically worked through her list, counting every penny, knowing Thomas would interrogate her about any discrepancy. Mr. Morrison, the store owner, was kind enough, though he had begun to look at her with something like pity in recent months, which made Rose's cheeks burn with shame. "Mrs. Wellington," he said as he tallied her purchases, "you are looking a bit peaked, if you do not mind me saying. Are you feeling well?" "I am fine, thank you," Rose replied quickly, not meeting his eyes. "Just the heat." She paid for the supplies and was loading them into the wagon when she heard her stomach growl loudly. She had not eaten since yesterday afternoon, and even then it had only been some bread and a small piece of cheese. Thomas had finished the stew she made, eating 3 full bowls while she watched. He had not offered her any, saying she needed to learn to be less wasteful with their resources. Rose pressed a hand to her stomach, fighting off a wave of dizziness. She needed to eat something before the long ride home. She had a few coins left, money she had saved secretly over months from selling eggs from their chickens at the market. Thomas did not know about this small fund, and Rose guarded it jealously, seeing it as her only lifeline to independence. The restaurant down the street called to her, and Rose made a decision. She would have one meal, just one, before going home. She deserved that much. She tied up the wagon and walked toward the establishment, called Rose's Cantina, which was known for serving good food at fair prices. As she approached the door, she hesitated, suddenly aware of how she must look, thin and worn, her dress clean but old. She pushed open the door anyway, and was immediately enveloped in the rich smells of cooking meat, beans, and fresh tortillas. The restaurant was fairly busy, with most tables occupied by miners and cowboys taking their midday meal. Rose stood uncertainly by the entrance, looking for an empty table when she realized most of them were full. "Can I help you, Senora?" asked a pretty young woman with dark hair and kind eyes, clearly one of the waitresses. "I was hoping to get something to eat," Rose said softly. "But I see you are quite full." "We can find you a spot," the waitress said warmly. "Give me just a moment." Rose waited, trying to ignore the curious glances from some of the patrons. She knew what they saw, a woman alone without her husband, too thin, probably the subject of gossip. The thought made her want to turn and leave, but her hunger kept her rooted to the spot. "Excuse me, madam." Rose turned to find the cowboy she had noticed earlier standing beside her. Up close, he was even more striking, with clear blue eyes that held genuine warmth and a face that was handsome in a rugged, honest way. He looked to be in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and the bearing of a man comfortable in his own strength. "I could not help but notice you are waiting for a table," he said, his voice deep and courteous. "I have a table to myself, and I would be honored if you would join me. It seems a shame for you to wait when there is an empty chair right there." Rose hesitated, knowing what Thomas would say if he found out she had shared a table with a strange man. But Thomas was not here, and this cowboy was only being kind. Besides, every other table was full, and the thought of waiting another 20 minutes made her head swim. "That is very kind of you," she said finally. "If you are certain you do not mind." "Not at all, madam. Please." He gestured toward his table, which was positioned near the window. As Rose followed him, she noticed he had the confident walk of a man who spent his days on horseback. He pulled out a chair for her, and Rose sat down, genuinely surprised by the courtesy. "I am Adam Yates," he said, removing his hat and setting it on the chair beside him. "I run a ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Rose Wellington," she replied, folding her hands in her lap. "My husband and I have a small ranch to the east. Adam nodded, and Rose noticed he did not pry further, which she appreciated. The waitress came over, smiling at Adam like an old friend. "Hola, Adam. Your usual." "Yes, please, Maria, and whatever the lady would like." Rose looked at the simple menu written on a board behind the counter. Everything looked wonderful, but she was conscious of her limited funds. "Just the bean and rice plate, please, and water." "You should have some meat," Adam said gently. "The beef here is excellent." "Maria, bring her the same as me, please." "Oh no, I could not," Rose protested. But Maria had already whisked away, and Adam was looking at her with such genuine concern that her words died in her throat. "You look like you could use a good meal, if you do not mind me saying so, Mrs. Wellington. And I invited you to sit, so it is only right that I treat you. I insist." Rose felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. She could not remember the last time someone had shown her such simple kindness, such basic human decency. "Thank you," she whispered. "That is very generous." They sat in silence for a moment, and Rose was grateful that Adam did not seem to feel the need to fill every second with conversation. She looked out the window at the busy street, trying to compose herself. When she glanced back at Adam, she found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Forgive me for being forward," he said quietly, "but are you all right? You seem troubled." Rose stiffened, her instinct to protect her privacy warring with an overwhelming need to talk to someone, anyone who might understand. "I am fine," she said automatically. "Just tired from the heat." Adam nodded slowly, but his eyes told her he did not believe her. "I grew up in Missouri," he said, seemingly changing the subject. "Came out here 5 years ago after my father passed. Left behind a lot of painful memories. Sometimes a new start is what a person needs, but sometimes the pain follows you no matter how far you travel." Rose looked at him sharply, hearing the understanding in his words. "What made you leave Missouri?" "My father was not a kind man," Adam said simply. "He was hard on my mother, hard on me and my sisters. I stayed as long as I could to protect them, but after he died, I realized I needed to build something of my own, something good. My sisters married decent men, my mother went to live with my aunt, and I headed west." "Do you ever regret it?" Rose asked. "Leaving?" "Not for a moment," Adam said firmly. "Life is too short to spend it being miserable. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. That is my belief anyway." Before Rose could respond, Maria returned with 2 plates piled high with beef, beans, rice, and fresh tortillas. The smell alone made Rose's mouth water. Adam said a quick, simple grace, and then gestured for her to eat. Rose picked up her fork with a trembling hand and took a small bite. The food was delicious, seasoned perfectly, and she had to force herself not to eat too quickly. Adam ate at a leisurely pace, occasionally making small comments about the weather or the town, never prying into her personal life, never making her feel uncomfortable. "How is your ranch doing?" Rose asked, wanting to shift the focus away from herself. Adam's face brightened. "It is doing well, thank you for asking. I have about 200 head of cattle now, some good grazing land, and a few hands who work for me. It has taken 5 years of hard work, but I am finally starting to see the fruits of my labor. My goal is to build something lasting, something I can be proud of." "That sounds wonderful," Rose said, and meant it. There was something inspiring about Adam's quiet determination, his clear vision for his future. It stood in stark contrast to Thomas's constant complaints and failures. "What about your ranch?" Adam asked politely. Rose hesitated, not wanting to lie but also not wanting to reveal too much. "It has been difficult," she admitted. "The climate here is so different from back east. We have struggled with the cattle, with the drought. My husband—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. It takes a special kind of person to make it out here, Adam said diplomatically, and an even more special kind of partnership. Ranching is hard enough without having someone by your side who shares your vision and your determination. Rose nodded, blinking back tears. She and Thomas had never been partners, not really. He had made all the decisions, blamed her for all the failures, and taken credit for the few successes they had managed. They continued eating, and Adam told her stories about his ranch, about the complications of managing cattle in the Arizona heat, about the reliable workers he had found, about his plans to expand. Rose found herself relaxing, laughing at his self-deprecating humor, enjoying the simple pleasure of conversation with someone who treated her like a person worthy of respect. When the meal was finished, Rose felt more satisfied than she had in months. Adam insisted on paying the entire bill, refusing to let her contribute even a penny. As they stood to leave, Rose felt a pang of regret that this brief interlude was ending. "Thank you, Mr. Yates," she said formally as they stepped out onto the boardwalk, "for your kindness and generosity. It meant more than you know." "It was my pleasure, Mrs. Wellington," Adam replied, putting his hat back on. His blue eyes were serious as he looked at her. "I hope you do not think me too forward, but if you or your husband ever need help with your ranch, or if you find yourself in any difficulty, my place is 10 miles north on the Creek Road. Anyone in town can give you directions. I mean that sincerely." Rose nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you. That is very kind." She turned to go to her wagon, but Adam's voice stopped her. "Mrs. Wellington, Rose, if I may." She looked back at him, and the concern in his face made her heart squeeze. "You deserve to be treated well," he said quietly. "Never forget that." Rose could not find words to respond. She simply nodded and hurried to her wagon, climbing up onto the seat with shaking hands. As she guided the mare out of town, she glanced back once and saw Adam still standing there, watching to make sure she got off safely. The ride home felt longer than usual, and with each mile, Rose felt her brief moment of peace slipping away, replaced by the familiar dread that filled her whenever she approached their ranch. Sure enough, when she pulled the wagon up to the house, Thomas was standing on the porch, his arms crossed, his expression thunderous. "You are late," he said coldly as she climbed down. "I am sorry. The store was busy, and then I do not want excuses," Thomas interrupted. "Get those supplies unloaded and start dinner. I have been waiting for hours." Rose bit back a retort and began carrying the supplies into the house. Her stomach was full for the first time in weeks, and somehow that small comfort gave her a tiny bit of strength. As she prepared dinner, Thomas sat in his chair, criticizing every movement she made, every decision about the meal. "This meat is too expensive," he complained, looking at what she had bought. "Were you trying to bankrupt us?" "It was the cheapest cut Mr. Morrison had," Rose replied evenly. "You probably were not even paying attention. Too busy gossiping with the other women, no doubt." Rose said nothing, focusing on slicing vegetables. She thought about Adam's words about how everyone deserved respect and kindness, and felt a small flame of defiance kindle in her chest. She might have to endure Thomas's cruelty, but she did not have to believe his lies about her worth. That night, as she lay in bed, Rose thought about the cowboy who had given her the seat at his table, who had treated her with more courtesy in 1 hour than her husband had shown her in 3 years. She thought about his offer of help, and wondered if she would ever be brave enough to accept it. The weeks that followed were difficult. Thomas seemed to grow more bitter with each passing day, his criticisms more cutting, his control more absolute. He began measuring out Rose's food portions himself, claiming she was wasting resources. Rose grew thinner, weaker, but she held on to her secret fund, and the memory of one kind man who had shown her that not everyone in the world was cruel. One evening in late July, everything came to a head. Thomas had spent the day in town and come home drunk, something that was happening more frequently. He stumbled into the house, knocking over a chair, and glared at Rose with bloodshot eyes. "I ran into Morrison today," he slurred. "He told me he saw you having lunch with some cowboy a few weeks back, sitting there bold as brass, laughing and carrying on like some saloon girl." Rose's blood ran cold. It was not like that. The restaurant was full and he offered to share his table. It was perfectly innocent. "Innocent," Thomas spat. "My wife, making me look like a fool in front of the whole town. People are talking, Rose, saying you are stepping out on me." "That is absurd," Rose said, her voice shaking. "I have never been unfaithful to you. I was hungry and a kind stranger offered to share his table." "That is all." Thomas lurched forward and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "You are my wife. You do not accept charity from other men. You do not make me look weak." "Let go of me," Rose said, trying to pull away. "You are worthless," Thomas hissed, his face inches from hers. "A burden around my neck. I should have never married you. You have brought me nothing but misery and failure." Something inside Rose snapped. Maybe it was the memory of Adam's kindness, or maybe it was simply that she had endured enough, but suddenly she was not afraid anymore. She was angry. "I have brought you failure," she said, her voice rising. "You are the one who knows nothing about ranching. You are the one who gambles away our money in town. You are the one who drinks instead of working. I have done everything I can to make this ranch succeed, but you blame me for your own shortcomings." Thomas's hand flew up and Rose flinched, certain he was going to strike her. But at the last moment, he seemed to catch himself. He shoved her away instead, and she stumbled back against the table. "Get out of my sight," he growled. "I cannot stand to look at you." Rose did not need to be told twice. She grabbed her shawl and fled out into the night, her heart pounding. She walked blindly into the desert, not caring where she was going, just needing to get away. The moon was bright overhead, illuminating the landscape in silver light. She walked for what felt like hours, until her legs were shaking and she was completely disoriented. When she finally stopped, Rose realized she had no idea where she was. The house was nowhere in sight. She had been so upset that she had not paid attention to her direction. Panic began to set in as she turned in a circle, seeing nothing but endless desert in every direction. She was lost, alone, in the Arizona desert at night. Rose sank down onto a rock, trying to fight off the terror rising in her chest. She had heard stories of people dying in the desert, of rattlesnakes and scorpions and the deadly heat that would come with the morning sun. She wrapped her shawl tighter around herself, shivering despite the warm night air. She must have dozed off from sheer exhaustion, because the next thing she knew, the sky was beginning to lighten with dawn. Rose stood up stiffly, her body aching, and tried to get her bearings. In the growing light, she could see she was near a small creek bed, and in the distance, she spotted what looked like buildings. Hope surging through her, Rose began walking toward the structures. As she got closer, she realized it was a ranch, a well-maintained one with a large house, several outbuildings and corrals holding horses and cattle. A sign near the entrance read, "Yates Ranch." Rose stopped dead in her tracks. Of all the places she could have wandered to, she had somehow ended up at Adam Yates's ranch. For a moment, she considered turning around, trying to find her own way home. But she was exhausted, thirsty, and had no idea which direction to go. And Adam had said if she ever needed help, she could come here. Swallowing her pride, Rose walked up the path toward the main house. Before she could even reach the porch, the front door opened and Adam stepped out. He was in his work clothes, clearly about to start his day, but his expression changed from surprise to concern the moment he saw her. "Rose!" He was down the steps in an instant, striding toward her. "My God, what happened? Are you hurt?" "I got lost," Rose said, and to her horror she started crying. "I left my house last night and walked too far, and I could not find my way back, and I did not know what else to do." Adam did not hesitate. He put a gentle hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the house. "Come inside. You need water and food. Everything else can wait." He led her into a clean, comfortable kitchen and pulled out a chair at a large wooden table. Rose sank into it gratefully as Adam poured her a glass of water from a pitcher. She drank it down in desperate gulps, and he immediately refilled it. "Slowly now," he said gently. "Let me get you some breakfast." Rose wanted to protest, but she was too tired and too hungry. She watched as Adam moved efficiently around the kitchen, stoking the fire in the stove, cracking eggs into a pan, slicing bread. Within minutes, he placed a plate in front of her with scrambled eggs, toast with butter, and some sliced peaches from a jar. "Eat," he said simply, sitting down across from her with his own plate. Rose ate, and with each bite she felt a little bit more human. Adam did not pepper her with questions or demand explanations. He simply ate his own breakfast and let her have the space to collect herself. When she finally put down her fork, she looked up to find him watching her with those kind blue eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I am sorry to intrude on you like this." "You are not intruding," Adam said firmly. "I am glad you found your way here. What happened, Rose? And please tell me the truth." So she did. Sitting in that sunny kitchen, Rose told Adam everything. About Thomas's cruelty, his accusations, his anger, the way he controlled her food and her freedom. About how she had fled last night and gotten lost. As she spoke, she watched Adam's expression grow darker, his jaw tightening. "He has no right to treat you that way," Adam said when she finished, his voice rough with anger. "No right at all." "He is my husband," Rose said wearily. "I made vows." "Vows go both ways," Adam replied. "He vowed to cherish you." "It sounds like he has broken his promises long before you came to my door." Rose looked down at her hands. "I do not know what to do. I have no family here, no money of my own except a few dollars I have hidden away." "Where would I go?" "You could stay here," Adam said immediately. Rose's head snapped up. "I could not do that. People would talk. It would ruin your reputation." "I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who lives in one of the guest rooms," Adam said. "You could stay in the other guest room. Everything would be proper and above board. And I do not give a damn what people say about me. I care about making sure you are safe." "Adam, Rose did not know what to say. The offer was tempting, so tempting, but the thought of the scandal it would cause made her hesitate. "At least stay today," Adam urged. "Rest, recover your strength. Mrs. Chen will be here soon and she can tend to you properly. Then tonight, if you want, I will take you home. But please do not make any decisions while you are exhausted and upset." Rose nodded slowly. "All right, just for today." Adam smiled, and Rose felt something warm unfold in her chest. "Good. Now let me show you to the guest room. You should rest." He led her through the house, which was surprisingly well appointed for a bachelor's home. The guest room was charming, with a comfortable bed covered in a colorful quilt, lace curtains on the windows, and a washstand with a porcelain basin. "This was my sister's room when she visited last year," Adam explained. "She left behind some clothes that might fit you. Feel free to use anything you need." "Your sister?" Rose asked, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Sarah. She is married to a doctor in Prescott now, very happy." Adam smiled. "She would like you, I think." After Adam left, Rose washed her face and hands, then lay down on the bed. She meant to rest for just a few minutes, but exhaustion overtook her and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke, the sun was high in the sky, and she could hear voices from elsewhere in the house. Rose sat up, momentarily disoriented, before remembering where she was. She spotted a simple cotton dress laid out on the chair, clearly left there by someone while she slept. It was a soft green color and looked much fresher than her own wrinkled dress. Rose changed quickly, finding that the dress fit reasonably well, though it was a bit loose on her thin frame. She braided her hair and then ventured out of the room. Following the sound of voices, she found herself in the kitchen, where Adam was talking with an older Chinese woman who was kneading bread dough. "Ah, you are awake," Adam said warmly. "Rose, this is Mrs. Chen. She keeps this house running and makes sure I do not live on beef jerky and coffee alone." Mrs. Chen smiled, her eyes crinkling kindly. "Mr. Adam told me you got lost in the desert. Very dangerous. You are lucky." "I know," Rose said. "Thank you for your hospitality." Sit, Mrs. Chen urged, gesturing to the table. "I make you some soup. You need good food, build your strength." As Rose sat, she noticed Adam watching her with an expression she could not quite decipher. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," Rose admitted. "The rest helped. I should probably think about getting home before dark." "Are you certain that is what you want?" Adam asked quietly. Rose hesitated. Was it what she wanted? The thought of going back to Thomas, to his cruelty and his anger, made her feel physically ill. But what choice did she have? "I have to go back eventually," she said finally. "I am his wife." "You do not have to do anything," Adam said. "Rose, I know we do not know each other well, but I want you to understand something. You have a choice. You always have a choice." Mrs. Chen brought over a bowl of rich chicken soup, and Rose ate slowly, thinking about Adam's words. Did she really have a choice? In 1878 Arizona, a woman's options were limited. Divorce was scandalous and difficult to obtain. She had no independent means of support. Going back to Philadelphia would require money she did not have. "What would you do?" Rose asked Adam. "If you were in my position." Adam was quiet for a long moment. "I think I would ask myself what kind of life I wanted to live. And then I would do whatever it took to live that life, no matter how difficult it might be." "That is easy to say when you are a man," Rose said, not unkindly. "The world gives you choices it does not give to women." "That is true," Adam acknowledged, "and it is unjust. But that does not mean you are powerless, Rose. You are stronger than you think." They talked for hours that afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table while Mrs. Chen bustled about her chores. Adam told Rose about his life, his dreams for the ranch, his hopes of building something meaningful. Rose found herself opening up in return, telling him about her childhood in Philadelphia, her love of reading, her dreams of becoming a teacher before she met Thomas. "You could still do that," Adam said. "Tucson needs teachers. There is a new school opening in the fall." "I have no certification," Rose pointed out. "You have education and intelligence," Adam countered. "That counts for something. Mrs. Porter, who runs the school, is practical. She cares more about whether someone can actually teach than about fancy papers." As the afternoon turned to evening, Rose felt herself relaxing in a way she had not in years. Adam made her laugh with stories about his early, disastrous attempts at ranching. Mrs. Chen shared recipes and tips for desert gardening. It was all so normal, so comfortable, that Rose almost forgot about the reality waiting for her back at her own ranch. But as the sun began to set, she knew she could not put it off any longer. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Thomas will be worried or angry, probably angry." Adam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I will take you in the wagon. It will be faster than you walking." They rode in comfortable silence, the desert beautiful in the fading light. When they reached Rose's ranch, they could see Thomas standing on the porch, and even from a distance, Rose could tell he was furious. "I can come in with you," Adam offered. "Make sure everything is all right." "No," Rose said quickly. "That would only make things worse. Thank you, Adam, for everything." She climbed down from the wagon and walked toward the house, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Adam drive away slowly, as if reluctant to leave. Thomas watched her approach, his face like stone. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "I got lost in the desert last night," Rose said, keeping her voice steady. "I found my way to a ranch this morning and they helped me get back." "Which ranch?" Rose hesitated, knowing the truth would enrage him but unable to bring herself to lie. "The Yates ranch." Thomas's face flushed red. "That cowboy, I knew it. You have been whoring around with him, have you not?" "No," Rose said firmly. "I was lost and frightened and he helped me. That is all." "You expect me to believe that?" Thomas grabbed her arm, dragging her into the house. "You disappear all night and show up escorted by some other man, and I am supposed to think nothing is going on." "Believe what you want," Rose said, surprising herself with her defiance. "I know the truth." Thomas shoved her toward the bedroom. "Get in there." "I do not want to look at you right now." Rose went, but she held her head high. She changed into her nightgown and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She could hear Thomas pacing in the other room, muttering to himself. Eventually, she heard him leave the house, probably heading to the barn to drink himself into a stupor. Rose closed her eyes and let herself think about the day she had just experienced. Adam's kindness, Mrs. Chen's warmth, the feeling of being treated like a human being worthy of respect. It had been like a glimpse of another life, a better life, and now that she had seen it, she did not know how she could go back to settling for less. The next few weeks were tense. Thomas watched Rose like a hawk, questioning her every move, accusing her of plotting to run away. He stopped giving her any money at all, taking over all the shopping trips himself. Rose felt like a prisoner in her own home, but she endured it silently, biding her time. Late one night, she was startled awake by the sound of horses outside. Thomas was snoring beside her, dead drunk as usual. Rose slipped out of bed and looked out the window to see several men on horseback surrounding the house. Her heart leapt into her throat. Bandits. Raiders. Then one of the men called out, "Thomas Wellington, we know you are in there. Come out and face what you have done." Thomas jolted awake, cursing. He stumbled to the window and Rose saw his face go pale in the moonlight. "Who are they?" Rose whispered. "None of your concern," Thomas said, but she could hear the fear in his voice. The man outside called again. "You owe money, Wellington, a lot of money. We gave you time to pay, but you have been dodging us for weeks." Rose stared at her husband. "What is he talking about?" "I borrowed some money," Thomas admitted, "for the ranch, but these men are criminals charging outrageous interest. How much do you owe?" Thomas did not answer, which told Rose it must be a significant sum. The men outside were getting more aggressive, threatening to burn the house if Thomas did not come out. Rose felt terror rising in her chest. "You have to face them," she said. "If you explain, they do not want explanations. They want money I do not have," Thomas said bitterly. He looked at Rose, and for a moment, something like regret crossed his face. "I have made a mess of everything, have I not?" Before Rose could answer, one of the men fired a shot into the air. "Last chance, Wellington," Thomas squared his shoulders. "Stay inside," he told Rose, and then he walked out to face the men. Rose watched through the window, her hands pressed against the glass. She could see Thomas talking to the men, gesturing helplessly. Then one of the men climbed down from his horse and hit Thomas across the face, knocking him to the ground. They began kicking him, and Rose screamed, running out of the house in her nightgown. "Stop, please stop," she cried. The men paused, looking at her with surprise. One of them, the leader apparently, stepped forward. "This does not concern you, lady. Your husband owes us $300. We are here to collect." "I do not have that money," Rose said desperately. "Please, there must be some way to work this out." The man looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "There might be other ways to settle the debt," he said with a nasty grin. "Leave her alone," Thomas groaned from the ground, his face bloody. "She has nothing to do with this. She is your wife, is she not? That makes it her concern." Rose backed away as the man advanced on her, her heart hammering in terror. She knew what he was suggesting, and the thought made her want to vomit. Just as he reached for her, a gunshot rang out and the man stumbled backward. "Touch her and the next bullet goes through your heart," said a familiar voice. Rose spun around to see Adam Yates sitting on his horse at the edge of their property, a rifle pointed at the group of men. Behind him were 3 other riders, all armed. "This is not your business, Cowboy," the leader said, but Rose could hear uncertainty in his voice now. "I am making it my business," Adam said calmly. "How much does he owe you?" $300. Adam reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch. He tossed it to the ground between them. "There is $350. Take it and leave. Now." The leader picked up the pouch, checked the contents, and nodded. "All right, the debt is paid." He looked at Thomas with contempt. "You are lucky you have friends, Wellington. Most men are not so fortunate." The men mounted their horses and rode off into the night. The moment they were gone, Rose ran to Adam's horse, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. "How did you know?" she asked. "I have been keeping an eye on your place," Adam admitted, climbing down from his horse. "I heard rumors in town about your husband's gambling debts, about the men who were coming to collect. I could not take the chance that you might be caught in the middle." He walked over to where Thomas was struggling to sit up. Adam knelt beside him, his expression hard. "You put your wife in danger," he said quietly. "You gambled away money you did not have, and you let those men threaten her." "I know," Thomas said, his voice thick. He looked at Rose, and she saw something broken in his eyes. "I know what I am. I have known for a long time. I am a failure, Rose, at everything, and I made you pay for my failures." Rose did not know what to say. She felt pity for Thomas, but also anger and a strange sort of relief that the truth was finally out in the open. Adam stood and turned to Rose. "You do not have to stay here," he said gently. "Come back to my ranch. You will be safe there." "I cannot just leave," Rose protested, but even as she said it, she knew it was what she wanted. "Yes, you can," Adam said. "Rose, you deserve better than this. You deserve to be safe and cared for. Please, let me help you." Rose looked at Thomas, who was staring at the ground, blood dripping from his split lip. "Go," he said quietly. "I have no right to ask you to stay. I never did. Thomas." "I mean it, Rose. Go with him. He can give you the life I never could. You deserve that." Rose felt tears running down her cheeks, but she nodded. She went into the house and quickly gathered her few personal belongings, her clothes, the little bit of money she had hidden away, and a photograph of her parents. When she came back out, Adam was waiting by his horse. He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. His arms came around her to hold the reins, and Rose felt safe for the first time in years. As they rode away from the ranch, she looked back once to see Thomas still sitting in the dirt, a broken man watching his wife ride away with another. The ride to Adam's ranch was quiet. Rose was shaking, the events of the night catching up with her. When they arrived, Mrs. Chen was waiting, having been alerted by one of Adam's ranch hands. She clucked sympathetically and led Rose inside, getting her settled in the guest room with warm tea and a blanket. "You are safe now," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Mr. Adam, he is good man. He take care of you." Rose nodded, too exhausted to speak. She slept fitfully that night, plagued by nightmares of the men and their threats. When she woke in the morning, sunlight was streaming through the lace curtains, and she could hear the sounds of the ranch coming to life outside. She dressed in one of the dresses Adam's sister had left behind and went to find him. He was in the barn, brushing down his horse, and he looked up with concern when he saw her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like my whole life has been turned upside down," Rose admitted. "Adam, I do not know how to thank you for what you did last night. You saved my life." "I could not stand by and let those men hurt you," Adam said simply. "Rose, I want you to know that you can stay here as long as you need. There is no pressure, no expectations. I just want you to be safe." "People will talk," Rose said. "They probably already are." "Let them talk," Adam replied. "I know the truth, you know the truth, and Mrs. Chen will chaperone every moment you are here to ensure your reputation stays intact. But honestly, Rose, I care more about your safety than I do about gossip." Rose felt something warm bloom in her chest as she looked at this good, kind man. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked softly. "You barely know me." Adam set down the brush and walked over to her. "I think I have known you longer than you realize," he said gently. "From the moment I saw you standing alone in that restaurant, looking so lost and sad, I felt something. And then when you sat with me when we talked, I knew. You are special, Rose. You deserve to be cherished, not torn down. And if I can help you find your way to a better life, then that is what I want to do." Rose felt tears prick her eyes. "I am still married," she reminded him. "Even if Thomas said I could leave, even if he was cruel, I am still bound to him by law." "Then we will figure out how to unbind you," Adam said. "But in the meantime, you have a safe place here. You can rest, recover, and decide what you want your future to look like." Over the following weeks, Rose slowly came back to life. Adam kept his word, treating her with perfect courtesy and respect. Mrs. Chen became a friend and confidante, teaching Rose how to cook dishes from her homeland and sharing stories of her own difficult past. The ranch hands were respectful, tipping their hats when they saw her and never making inappropriate comments. Rose began helping around the ranch, working in the garden. Mrs. Chen maintained, learning how to preserve food for the winter, even helping with the bookkeeping when Adam discovered she had a talent for numbers. She felt useful for the first time in years, and with regular meals and kind treatment, she began to gain weight, her cheeks filling out, her eyes regaining their sparkle. Adam was endlessly patient and kind. He never pushed her, never made demands. They fell into an easy routine, taking breakfast together each morning, working through the day, then sitting on the porch in the evenings to watch the sunset. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing their thoughts and dreams, their fears and hopes. Rose found herself falling for him, slowly but surely. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the strength in his hands when he helped her down from a wagon, the gentle way he spoke to his horses and cattle. He was everything Thomas was not: patient, kind, hardworking, and genuinely good. One evening in September, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Adam turned to her. "Rose, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, her heart suddenly racing. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you," Adam said quietly. "I know the timing is terrible, and I know you are still legally married, and I do not want to pressure you. But I cannot keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. You have become the most important person in my world, and I needed you to know that." Rose felt tears slide down her cheeks. "Adam, I am falling in love with you too, but I do not know what to do about it. I want to be free of Thomas, but divorce is so difficult, so scandalous. I do not want to ruin your reputation or your business." "You could never ruin anything," Adam said firmly. He reached over and gently took her hand. "We will find a way, Rose. I promise you that." Even if it takes time, even if it is difficult, we will find a way to be together properly and honorably." The next week, Adam rode into Tucson and hired a lawyer. The man, Mr. Silas Foster, was sympathetic but realistic. "Divorce is possible but challenging," he told them in his office, Rose sitting beside Adam, their hands clasped together. "You will need grounds. Cruelty would be your best argument, and I understand from Mr. Yates that you have plenty of evidence of that." "What about Thomas?" Rose asked. "Will he have to agree?" "It would be easier if he did, but not strictly necessary. If he contests it, the process will take longer and be more expensive. But based on what Mr. Yates has told me about his debts and behavior, I suspect he may not fight it." They were right. When Mr. Foster sent word to Thomas about the divorce proceedings, Thomas sent back a letter saying he would not contest it. "I have nothing left to offer her," he wrote, "and she deserves better than what I am. Let her be free." It was the kindest thing Thomas had ever done for Rose, and she found herself crying when she read the letter, mourning not the man Thomas was, but the man he could have been if he had made different choices. The divorce took 4 months to finalize, 4 long months during which Rose and Adam maintained perfect propriety, always chaperoned by Mrs. Chen, never crossing the line into impropriety, even though the tension between them was palpable. They were both determined to do things right, to build their relationship on a foundation of honesty and respect. During that time, Rose took Adam's advice and approached Mrs. Porter about teaching at the new school. To her delight, Mrs. Porter hired her on the spot, impressed by Rose's education and her passion for learning. Rose began teaching in October, working with a group of children ranging from age 6 to 14, and she loved every moment of it. Finally, in January of 1879, the divorce was finalized. Rose was free. That evening, Adam asked her to walk with him out to a small hill overlooking the ranch. The sunset was spectacular, painting the desert in shades of gold and rose. "Rose Wellington," Adam said, taking both her hands in his, "you are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You survived cruelty with grace, you rebuilt yourself with courage, and you have filled my life with joy I never thought I would find. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Rose looked into his dear, kind face and felt her heart overflow with love. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Adam, I will marry you. I love you so much." Adam pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Rose felt like she was finally home. This was what love was supposed to feel like: safe, warm, uplifting. Not the harsh demands and cruel words she had endured with Thomas, but this gentle, powerful thing that made her feel like she could face anything as long as Adam was by her side. They were married a month later in a small ceremony at the church in Tucson. Mrs. Chen served as Rose's attendant, and one of Adam's ranch hands stood up with him. Rose wore a simple cream-colored dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, and Adam wore his best suit, his eyes shining with love as Rose walked down the aisle toward him. "I promise to cherish you all the days of my life," Adam said as they exchanged vows. "To treat you with respect and kindness, to be your partner in all things, and to love you with everything I am." Rose felt tears of joy streaming down her face as she made her own vows. "I promise to stand by your side, to build a life with you based on love and trust, to be your companion and your friend, and to love you forever." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Adam kissed her, Rose felt like her heart might burst with happiness. This was her new beginning, her second chance, her reward for surviving the darkness. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous but filled with love. Adam was patient and gentle, making sure Rose felt safe and cherished every moment. Afterward, lying in his arms in their bed, Rose marveled at how different this was from her first marriage. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, running his fingers through her hair. "That I did not know it was possible to be this happy," Rose said honestly. "That I am so grateful I found my way to you." "I am the grateful one," Adam replied, kissing her forehead. "You are my everything, Rose Yates." Rose Yates. She loved the sound of that. It was not just a new name, but a new identity, a new life built on love instead of fear. The months that followed were the happiest of Rose's life. She continued teaching, finding deep satisfaction in helping her students learn and grow. Adam's ranch continued to prosper, and Rose became a full partner in running it, managing the books and helping make decisions about the business. They worked side by side, two people who complemented each other perfectly. Mrs. Chen remained with them, becoming like a beloved aunt, fussing over them and making sure they ate properly and did not work too hard. The ranch hands respected Rose as the boss's wife and valued her kindness and fair treatment. In the spring, Rose discovered she was pregnant. She and Adam were overjoyed, spending hours talking about their hopes for their child, making plans for the future. Adam was attentive and caring throughout her pregnancy, insisting she rest when she was tired and making sure she had everything she needed. In December of 1879, Rose gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel Adam Yates, and he was perfect. Adam cried when he held his son for the first time, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered to Rose as she lay exhausted but happy in their bed, baby Samuel sleeping in her arms. "Thank you for giving me this gift, for building this beautiful life with me." "Thank you for saving me," Rose replied, "for showing me what love really means." As the years passed, their family grew. 2 years after Samuel was born, Rose had a daughter they named Elizabeth, and 3 years after that, another son they called Daniel. The ranch house rang with the sounds of children laughing and playing, and Rose and Adam's love only deepened with time. Rose often thought back to that day in the restaurant when a kind cowboy had offered her a seat at his table, treating her with more courtesy in 1 hour than her husband had shown her in years. That simple act of kindness had changed the entire course of her life, leading her from darkness into light. She heard news of Thomas occasionally through town gossip. He had left their old ranch and drifted from place to place, never quite getting his life together. Rose felt pity for him but no regret about leaving. She had given him 3 years of her life and her best efforts, but she could not save someone who did not want to be saved. Instead, she poured her love into her new family, into the life she and Adam built together. They expanded the ranch, hiring more hands and increasing their herd. Rose continued teaching for several years until the demands of their growing family became too much, but she never lost her love of education. She made sure all her children learned to read and write, and she opened the ranch house to any child in the area who wanted extra tutoring. Adam proved to be a wonderful father, patient and loving, teaching his sons and daughter about ranching and integrity and kindness. He never raised his voice in anger, never struck his children, never used fear as a tool of control. He showed them what a good man looked like, and Rose knew their children would carry those lessons throughout their lives. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam took Rose back to Rosa's Cantina, the restaurant where they had first shared a meal. Maria, the waitress who had served them that day, was now the owner, and she greeted them with delight. "Mr. and Mrs. Yates, it is so good to see you. Please sit at your special table." They sat at the same table by the window, and Rose reached across to take Adam's hand. "Do you remember that day?" she asked softly. "Every detail," Adam replied. I remember thinking you were the saddest, most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and I remember wanting to make you smile. I remember thinking that whoever had put that sadness in your eyes did not deserve you. You gave me the seat of honor that day, Rose said, tears shimmering in her eyes. When my own husband had told me I was not worth feeding, you treated me like I mattered. You saved my life, Adam, in every way a person can be saved. You saved mine too, Adam said. I was just going through the motions, building a ranch, working hard, but never really living. You brought light into my life, Rose. You and our children, you are everything to me. They enjoyed their meal, talking and laughing, celebrating the beautiful life they had built together. As they left the restaurant, Rose looked around at the bustling town of Tucson, thinking about how much had changed in 10 years. She was no longer that frightened, starving woman who did not know her own worth. She was Rose Yates, teacher, mother, rancher's wife, and partner in every sense of the word. That night, lying in bed with Adam's arms around her, Rose reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. There had been pain and darkness, yes, but that had only made the light sweeter. She had learned that she was strong enough to survive, brave enough to leave, and worthy of true love. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Adam replied, always and forever. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a fine young man with his father's integrity and his mother's quick mind. Elizabeth became a teacher like her mother, passionate about education and helping others. Daniel, the youngest, had a gift with horses and took over much of the ranch's breeding program while still in his teens. Rose and Adam grew older together, their love never wavering. They faced droughts and good years, economic ups and downs, the challenges of raising children and the eventual joy of grandchildren. Through it all, they remained partners, best friends, and lovers. When Rose turned 50, Adam threw her a surprise party, inviting everyone they knew from miles around. Mrs. Chen, now elderly but still spry, made all of Rose's favorite foods. Their 3 children and 5 grandchildren filled the house with noise and laughter. Friends and neighbors came to celebrate the woman who had touched so many lives with her kindness and strength. As Rose stood on the porch of their ranch house, looking out at all the people who loved her, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was her life now, full of love, laughter, purpose, and joy. She thought briefly of that broken young woman who had once believed her husband when he said she was not worth feeding, and she wanted to reach back through time and tell her that she was wrong, that she was worth everything, that better days were coming. Adam came up beside her and slipped his arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how blessed I am," Rose said. "About how one act of kindness changed everything. You gave me a seat at your table, Adam, but you gave me so much more than that. You gave me my life back. You gave me love, respect, and a future I could never have imagined." "You gave me all of that too," Adam said. "We gave it to each other, Rose. That is what love is supposed to be, 2 people lifting each other up, making each other better, building something beautiful together." As the sun set over their ranch, painting the desert sky in brilliant colors, Rose leaned into her husband's embrace and smiled. She had survived the darkness and found her way to the light. She had discovered her own strength, her own worth, and had built a life filled with love and purpose. And it had all started with a cowboy who saw her worth when she could not see it herself, who offered her not just a meal but a chance at a new life, who treated her with honor when she had been told she had none. Adam Yates had given her the seat of honor that day in the restaurant, but more importantly, he had given her a place of honor in his heart, and she had held that place ever since. As the party continued behind them, as their children's laughter rang out and their grandchildren chased each other across the yard. Rose and Adam stood together and watched the sunset. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. Their love story had started with an act of simple kindness, but it had grown into something profound and enduring, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and love. And they lived happily, surrounded by family and love, for the rest of their days, their story becoming a legend in Tucson about the woman who found her worth and the cowboy who always knew she had it. Years later, their grandchildren would tell the story to their own children, about how great-grandmother Rose had once been lost but was found, had once been broken but became whole, and how great-grandfather Adam had shown her that true love means treating your partner with honor, respect, and cherishing them every single day. The ranch continued to prosper under the management of their children, and eventually their grandchildren. The Yates name became synonymous with integrity and fair dealing throughout the territory. And at the heart of it all was the love story of Rose and Adam, a reminder that kindness matters, that courage can change your life, and that real love is built on mutual respect, partnership, and cherishing each other through all of life's seasons. Rose lived to the age of 78, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, her life full and rich and beautiful. Adam lived to 81, and to his last day, he looked at his wife with the same love and admiration he had felt that first day in the restaurant. When people asked them the secret to their long and happy marriage, they always gave the same answer. Treat each other with honor, never forget what brought you together, and remember that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every single day. And so the story ends not with heartbreak or loss, but with a life well lived, a love deeply felt, and a legacy that would continue for generations. Rose had gone from being a woman told she was not worth feeding to a woman who nourished an entire family with her love, strength, and wisdom. Adam had gone from a lonely rancher to a man whose life overflowed with purpose and joy. Together, they had proven that it is never too late for a new beginning, that kindness can change everything, and that true love, when it comes, is worth every risk, every challenge, and every moment of courage it takes to reach for it. Their story became a beacon of hope for others facing darkness, a reminder that there is always a way forward, always a chance for happiness, always the possibility of love. And it all started with one simple, profound act. A cowboy giving a hurting woman the seat of honor at his table, and in doing so, giving her back her life, her hope, and eventually her heart.